Let me start this video by saying I'm not a lawyer, and if you're not an expert in this field of law, then it's always best to err on the side of caution irrespective of what I'm about to say, as it can be a grey area. Now, whenever you mention web scraping to people, you're guaranteed to get mixed responses. Some people love web scraping because of its efficiency, its scalability, and all those other benefits. Others hate it because of the potential harm web scraping can cause. Now, regardless of your views on web scraping ethics, it always comes down to one question. Is web scraping legal? Now, unfortunately, there's not a clear-cut answer here. Some websites explicitly allow web scraping. Others explicitly forbid it. Now, many websites don't offer any clear guidance one way or the other, so it leaves some ambiguity in deciding whether to scrape or not. But before scraping any website, individuals who are attempting to scrape should look for a terms and conditions page to see if there are explicit rules about scraping their content. If there are, we should follow them. If there are not terms and conditions, then it becomes more of a judgment call. But you should acknowledge that scraping personal information that enables you to identify an individual, and other information such as their bank details, address, and so on, or scraping data that is copyrighted, is going to likely fall into the unacceptable category, unless permission is given by the individuals or companies that own the copyrighted data. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. Are you given permission to do so? Now, in terms of performance considerations, we need to remember that web scraping consumes server resources for the host website. Now, if we're just scraping one page once, this isn't going to cause too much of a problem. But if our code is going to scrape 1,000 pages every 2 minutes, then this could quickly get expensive for the website owner. So in addition to following the explicit rules about whether you can web scrape or not from a company's website, it's also a good idea to follow some best practices when performing web scraping. Firstly, as a developer, we should never scrape more frequently than we need to. So we need to think with efficiency in mind when it comes to web scraping. Secondly, we should always consider caching the contents that we scrape so that we only download it once. If you're running code that downloads data, but you don't cache that data, and then you run your code again to download the exact same thing, that's not the most efficient use of resources. And thirdly, another best practice to keep in mind is that we should build pauses into our code by using functions like time.sleep, for example, that we've seen earlier in the course. And this will avoid overwhelming the servers with too many requests too quickly, which can then ultimately cause the website to crash and lead to some downtime for that respective website, which isn't great for the host. Now, the good news is, for the purposes of this section and the scraping demonstration that I'm going to go through, the National Weather Service's data is public, and its terms and conditions do not forbid us from scraping this data, so we're good to go ahead with the demonstration. There are also many other practice websites that you can use in order to practice your web scraping skills. Now remember, if in doubt, always get permission from the site owner explicitly to avoid any ambiguity down the line. The last thing you want is to get caught up in legal proceedings because of naivety on our part. In the next video, we're going to start looking at the structure of a web page, which will help us in ultimately scraping data from that respective page. So I'll see you in the next video.